Hey everyone. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sixpath Weeb, and I'm hyped to have you here. Today's fanfic journey takes us deep into a reimagined shinobi world where Naruko was born of thunder and forged in flame, a tale of power, destiny, and the will to rewrite fate. Disclaimer: all content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Let's dive in. The Sandaime Hokage sat at his desk, still processing the events of the past several hours. The village of Konoha had endured devastation from the Kyubi no Kitsune, one of the most powerful of the tailed creatures that had once caused great disruption across the world. Minato Arashi Namikaze, the last member of the wind-wielding Namikaze clan and the fourth Hokage, had given everything in the effort to protect the village, sealing the Kyubi within an infant, his own newborn daughter. Now, a familiar figure from the past stood before the Hokage's desk, cloaked in a simple black hooded robe. Beneath the hood, the Hokage recognized the silver and gold tattooed face of a woman who had already seemed wise beyond her years when he'd first met her decades ago, back when he was a young shinobi, misjudging her as an enemy. "Hello, Kabatsu-san. I must admit, I didn't expect to see you again. Has it really been 30 years? Kabatsu Kora smiled, pulling back her hood. Her vibrant red hair shimmered in the light of the Hokage's office, and her forehead protector, bearing the insignia of an 8-pointed star, rested casually around her neck. Despite the passage of time, she looked remarkably unchanged. "Yes, it has been a while, Sarutobi-san," she said warmly. "But what can you expect? We've kept to the shadows. Last I heard, you had retired, and your famed student from the last war, the Namikaze, had become Hokage in your stead. So what brings you back to this old desk?" Sarutobi's expression grew serious. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Kora. I have no doubt that you know exactly what has transpired, just as you always seem to in the past. Minato Namikaze is gone. He sacrificed everything to seal the Kyubi no Kitsune. And with that, the last of the Namikaze clan is gone. So tell me, what interest do you still have in Konoha?" He purposefully did not mention the child, Minato's daughter, whose true lineage had been kept hidden for her safety. Kora gave a sly smile, almost playful. "Oh, Sarutobi. You know me better than that. As a former shadow operative of Nagaboshigakur, I can sense the legacy of the Guzenkei's line as easily as feeling the wind on my skin. But don't worry, long ago, the four clans renounced any claim to the Namikaze bloodline when the binding contract was returned to us. The child is safe. However," she trailed off meaningfully, "should she ever awaken the abilities of the Guzenkeis, we may need to ensure those powers are either safely sealed or that she is trained properly. The Kusetsukaze is not something to be taken lightly." Sarutobi was silent, but before he could respond, the doors burst open. An indignant Rin strode in, pushing Kushina Uzumaki in a wheelchair. Cradled in Kushina's arms was her baby daughter, Naruko, peacefully asleep. "Sarutobi." A team of Chonin just confronted Kushina and Naruko, blaming them for what happened. "It's no longer safe for them here," Rin declared, her tone sharp with concern. Rin fell quiet as she noticed the unknown woman before the Hokage and the focused look she cast at Naruko. Instinctively, Rin stepped between them protectively. "Whoever you are, you'll think twice before doing anything rash. That child will be protected." Kora met her gaze calmly. Sarutobi noticed a subtle shift in her eyes. Normally blue, they now shimmered with a faint red tint, like distant embers. "I mean no harm," Kora said, her voice carrying a new resonance, calm and powerful. "Sarutobi, why Minato would place such a powerful being within his own child? That's a question I won't press. But as a descendant of the Guzenkeis, the presence of such a spirit within her will inevitably awaken her legacy. Whether that's soon or far in the future, I cannot say." "What are you talking about?" Rin demanded, still on alert. Kora didn't flinch. "Calm yourself, young one. I am not here to cause trouble. Quite the opposite." She turned her gaze back to Naruko. "This child is special, far more than anyone can yet realize. And when her inherited powers begin to emerge, the four clans will be watching. It will then be up to her to choose how those abilities are used." Stepping toward the window, Kora's eyes returned to their usual blue. A gentle smile crossed her lips as she whispered, "Sleep peacefully, little child of the wind. May the gentle breezes of fate carry you forward and protect you always." In a burst of flame at her feet, Kora launched herself out of the window with a graceful spin. As she traced a seal along her arm, she called out, "Summoning technique." A puff of smoke revealed a majestic red and silver scaled dragon, adorned with a horned crown and wide wings. Korra landed gently on its back, grinning playfully. Until next time, old friend. With that, she and the dragon soared off into the night sky. Who was that? Rin exclaimed, glaring at the window. Sarutobi sighed, his face heavy with memories. An old ally. From long before I became Hokage. Rin turned back to Kushina, concern still clouding her features. If this village isn't safe anymore, what do you want to do? Kushina looked up, her voice quiet and tired. We'll stay at the Namikaze compound. Minato. He showed me how to access the protections. Before everything happened. Her voice broke as emotion overtook her. Rin quickly leaned in, offering comfort and support as she embraced her friend. Sarutobi remained silent, deep in thought. Well, with the two of you guiding and training her, it might just work. She'll be a bit isolated until her exams, but once she passes and becomes a Genin, no one in the village will be able to interfere without serious consequences, Sarutobi said with finality. He paused for a thoughtful moment, then gave a firm nod, his decision made. I've decided. From this moment on, you, Rin, and you, Uzumaki Kushina, are hereby assigned a long-term C-rank mission to train and protect Uzumaki Naruko. She is the heir to the Namikaze, Uzumaki, and Guzenkei's clans, and also the current host of the Kyubi no Kitsune. You'll be supported by an Anbu team, personally selected by me, who will deliver supplies weekly and offer additional protection beyond the existing barriers. You'll be given training materials and a few techniques from the Forbidden Scroll. From what I've seen of the Guzenkei's lineage, Naruko will be more than capable of mastering them by the time she's ready to become a Genin. Kushina looked up, her expression puzzled. What do you mean by Guzenkei's clan? And what was that woman talking about? Something like Kusetsuka's? Sarutobi sighed quietly. The woman you met was from Nagaboshigakur, a small hidden village located far to the west, nestled between the wind and earth countries. They have a unique and storied history. I'll explain more about the Kusetsukas later, but right now, we need to get Kushina and Naruko to safety. With that, Sarutobi removed his robes, revealing the lightweight armor beneath. Now follow me quickly. We'll get you to the Namikaze compound before anyone acts on misguided emotions. Sparrow, Inu, reveal yourselves. Two Anbu operatives, one wearing a bird mask and the other a dog mask, emerged silently from the shadows. You two cover our flanks. We'll take the underground tunnels to leave unnoticed. Sarutobi took the lead, with the Anbu flanking Rin, Kushina, and young Naruko as they moved to safety. 16 years later. 16-year-old Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze stood outside the Ninja Academy gates, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Today was the day she would finally join the rest of her peers in the Genin exams. Raised outside Konoha in her family's ancestral compound, she had lived a peaceful but secluded life, mostly trained by her mother Kushina and guardian Rin. Though they traveled to other villages for exposure to different people and customs, this was her first solo step into the village's core. Naruko wore sleek black pants and boots, paired with a deep red jacket over a crisp white shirt. Her blonde hair, streaked with red and black, was tied back into a ponytail, contrasting beautifully with her bright blue eyes. As she walked toward the academy, a blonde girl darted past her, shouting playfully at a pink-haired friend. Naruko smiled as she caught the teasing nickname Ino Pig. She chuckled when a bored-looking boy with spiky brown hair mumbled, "So troublesome." Yep, nervousness aside, this was already looking interesting. Nearby, Kushina, Rin, and Mitarashi Anko, the jounin who had helped in Naruko's final year of training, watched proudly. Kushina's eyes sparkled as she noticed a shy Hyuga girl pause, clearly taken aback by Naruko's presence. Anko grinned and nudged Kushina. Well, she certainly knows how to make an impression. I suppose that's what we get for letting her socialize in Ezo Town. The three adults shared a chuckle before vanishing with a body flicker technique. Inside the classroom, Naruko recognized a few familiar faces. She gave a respectful nod to Aburame Shino, having met him and his parents at a Hokage-hosted event, and exchanged a friendly high-five with Akamiki Kuji. Both had treated her kindly even after she shared her secret with them. Yo Kuji. How've you been? Munch, not bad. Glad you made it. Munch munch, wanna get barbecue after the exams? Naruko laughed, amused as ever by Kuji's ever-present snacks. Absolutely. I just need to stop by the Hokage Tower first. Meet you at Hikaru's around 6? Munch, you got it. Munch. Naruko headed up the stairs, passing a range of students, the blonde and pink-haired girl still squabbling over a seat near a stoic-looking boy with dark hair, and a rugged-looking boy with red face markings and a pup perched on his head, clearly an Inuzuka. She made her way to the back of the class and sat down. Just then, the Hyuga girl from earlier entered. Her eyes widened slightly as she spotted Naruko, but she quickly composed herself and approached. Hello. Mind if I sit here? Naruko gave a warm smile. Not at all. Sit wherever you like. I'm Hinata. Hyuga Hinata, the girl introduced herself, settling in beside her. Nice to meet you, Hinata. I'm Naruko. Noticing the teacher was late, Naruko asked, so, do they always run late here, or is it just this time? Hinata giggled softly. Not usually. Iruka-sensei is probably just finalizing the test. He'll be here soon. I'm not too worried, Naruko replied. Just a bit anxious about the exams. I've never been in a class like this. My mom and guardians taught me everything at home. Oh really? Why? Before Hinata could finish, the classroom door slid open and a scarred chunin with spiky brown hair entered, followed by another instructor with blue hair. All right, everyone. Settle down, Iruka said firmly. The two girls still arguing over the seat ignored him. With a quick series of hand signs, Iruka's head seemed to expand dramatically. I said quiet. Both girls immediately sat down, silent and wide-eyed. Much better. Now, as I was saying, we have a new student joining us, Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze. All eyes turned to Naruko. Some showed curiosity, others seemed to recognize her family name. For reasons that aren't for discussion, Naruko has been training under her mother and other jounin selected by the Hokage. She's here today to take the Junon exam, and if she passes, she may be placed on a team with two of you. One boy with dark hair and a stoic expression narrowed his eyes at Naruko, clearly wondering why she had received special training. Iruka continued, the exam will begin with a written portion, followed by obstacle navigation, accuracy, taijutsu, and ninjutsu assessments. Those who pass will be given instructions at the end of the day. Mizuki will now pass out the exams. Naruko leaned back in her seat with a confident grin. A written exam? This'll be easy. Beside her, Hinata smiled gently, her thoughts drifting as she looked at Naruko. As Iruka and Mizuki moved around the room collecting the completed exams, Naruko stretched her arms high over her head. She was far more used to studying sprawled out under a tree or lying on the soft grass at the Namikaze compound, so 3 hours of sitting still in a chair felt like an ordeal. A warm chuckle echoed in the back of her mind, her longtime partner in mischief clearly found her discomfort amusing. Try sitting still for 3 hours after running around for 16 years. Not fun, right? I've been here with you the whole time, remember? Came the teasing reply from within. Naruko chuckled softly, drawing a curious glance from Hinata. She gave her a playful wink. Of course I remember, silly fox. But at least you get to stretch a little. I've been stuck on the world's least comfortable chair. Hey. Well, don't worry, kid. That pineapple-haired teacher said the rest of the exam is practical. That's your kind of thing. Naruko stifled a laugh, already imagining how her classmates might react during the next part of the test. Naruko-chan. Why are you smiling like that? Hinata asked shyly. Naruko blinked, then smiled wider as she realized she must have looked like a cat playing with a toy. Oh, it's nothing. I was just deciding which technique to use for the ninjutsu portion. That's all. She scratched the back of her head, still chuckling quietly. Hinata shook her head slightly, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. This new girl, Naruko, was confusing her, but in a way she found interesting. All right, everyone, quiet down, Iruka called. Mizuki will take your papers for grading while I lead you out to the obstacle course for the second part of the exam. The classroom chatter quickly quieted. Naruko took the opportunity to scan the room. She noticed the two kunoichi who had passed her earlier still glaring at each other, and the quiet boy with the dark spiky hair, Sasuke, was giving her a cold look. Better keep an eye on him, Naruko thought. Her companion silently agreed. Gather your things and follow me, Iruka instructed, holding some papers as he walked toward the door. Naruko stood and stretched again, noticing out of the corner of her eye that Sasuke flashed her one last intense look before leaving, trailed by a small crowd of girls. When the room had cleared, only Hinata remained. I'm impressed, Naruko said casually. What? Hinata asked, blinking in surprise. Naruko smiled as she started walking toward the stairs. You're the only one who seems more interested in the exam than in Sasuke and his mysterious attitude. Hinata turned pale just as Kiba joined them, chuckling. What's his deal, anyway? Naruko asked. He kept looking at me all through the written test. Kiba shrugged as the three of them followed Kuji downstairs. You mean Sasuke Uchiha? He's kind of a loner. He talks a lot about becoming stronger and doesn't socialize much. Most people just leave him alone unless they have to work with him. Even though he has a bunch of girls who follow him around, he never seems interested in any of them. Honestly, he just acts like he's above it all. His little pup barked in agreement. Hey, yeah Akamaru, Kiba said, grinning. I bet his older brother. Kiba. Hinata interrupted sharply. You shouldn't talk that way about a classmate. Kiba blinked, surprised by her sudden firmness. Before anyone could respond, Iruka's voice echoed down the hallway urging them to hurry up. As they picked up their pace, Naruko glanced at Kiba with curiosity. So your name's Kiba, huh? I think I met someone in your family last year. Hana, right? Kiba grinned and nodded, Akamaru wagging his tail. Yeah, Hana's my older sister. She told me about meeting you too. Said something about you having a great sense of humor. Thud. They both turned to find Hinata fainted on the hallway floor. Dash. Konoha Ninja Academy Obstacle Course. Naruko waited with the other students as they each ran the obstacle course one by one. Some did well. Sasuke, she had to admit, completed it impressively. Others stumbled. One girl slipped off a rope and fell into a shallow puddle, another got tangled in a net before managing to push through to the end. When it was finally her turn, Naruko crouched at the start line, mimicking the stance of sprinters she'd once seen during a visit to the land of water. Remember, kid, the familiar voice in her head reminded her, don't show more than you have to. We both know how important it is to stay careful. Yeah, Naruko replied mentally. Just basic moves today. Nothing flashy. Kyubi chuckled. When Iruka called start, Naruko burst into motion, sprinting with graceful precision through the course. She weaved past obstacles effortlessly, moving with fox-like agility. At the finish line, she landed lightly and beamed when Iruka called out her time, fastest so far. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Sasuke glaring again. With a cheeky grin, she stuck out her tongue before hopping down from the platform. Wow, Naruko, that was awesome, Kiba said. Where'd you learn to move like that? It reminded me of a fox my sister and I saw once outside the village. Nearby, Hinata watched with interest. Naruko's sudden nervousness at Kiba's words didn't go unnoticed. She mentally filed the detail away. As she approached, she saw Naruko gently petting Akamaru, who barked happily in response. Hinata smiled, recalling the first time she'd met the little pup too. Dash. Flashback. Hey everyone, guess what? A younger Kiba shouted, bursting into the classroom and interrupting a few ongoing conversations, including one between Ino and Sakura, who were in their usual debate over who would impress Sasuke first. Kiba lifted his arms to reveal a fluffy white puppy nestled in them. Akamaru's finally old enough to come with me. Isn't that cool? Shikamaru, lying back in his seat, sighed. So troublesome. Kuji smiled as he munched on his customary 12 bags of chips. Hinata stood up and walked over to pet the new puppy, who eagerly sniffed and licked at her hand. Hinata giggled. You're so lucky your family is so close to their animals, Kiba. My father won't even let me keep a hamster. He feels that keeping animals as pets or companions is beneath us Hyuga. Sometimes I wish I could just speak up for once and leave. Hinata gasped and turned pale as she realized what she had just said. Kiba chuckled. Well, that's a first from you, Hinata. Glad to see you are finally gaining some confidence. Hinata's color returned as she smiled. Yeah, well, some things happened recently at home that made me finally realize I'm not worthless, though none of my relatives can see that. So, I guess I'll just have to make myself the best ninja I can be. Hinata chuckled at the bickering girls as she returned to her seat. End flashback. Hinata. Hey, Hinata, you okay? Hinata blinked as she found herself face to face with Naruko. What? Hinata stumbled backward as Naruko and Kiba bent over laughing, slapping each other's backs. Man, Kiba, Hinata-chan must have been zoned out pretty bad. Hinata blinked before getting an annoyed look on her face and stomping toward the two laughing friends. That wasn't funny. Naruko and Kiba laughed as they ran away from the angry Kunoichi chasing after them. Iruka just watched and shook his head. Mizuki, however, was watching the three with a thoughtful expression. Konoha Ninja Academy Target Practice Field. An hour later, All the students were lined up at the practice field as Iruka explained the rules of the third part of the exam. Okay, now listen up. The next part of the exam is the accuracy exam. You will each be given 3 kunai, 3 shurikens, and 3 senbon. You will aim for 3 critical points on the target. Your goal is to be as accurate as possible with your strikes, hitting each point with a kunai, shuriken, and senbon. Ino Yamanaka, you're up first. Hinata, Naruko, and Kiba stood near the back of the line and watched as Ino stepped up to the line and paused for a second. Suddenly, she shifted position, her hands moving rapidly. Looking at the target, all those watching could see that she had hit almost perfectly, only 1 senbon off slightly. Ino smirked at Sakura. Try to beat that, forehead. Ino walked out of the way as the next student stepped up and Mizuki reset the target. As each student took their turn, Kiba and Naruko chatted. So, you actually dared to paint the Hokage monument? Man, Kiba, that's bold. Kiba laughed. Well, when you're raised by 2 women, you end up needing to do something to get attention. Even if it's the wrong sort. Naruko laughed. You don't know the half of it. I may not have painted Baka on the Sandaime's forehead, but I've certainly pulled off my share of pranks. Just ask my mom about the time I replaced all the toilet paper in the Namikaze compound with her collection of ninjutsu scrolls. Hinata just shook her head, smiling. She had become good friends with Kiba over the past year, and she was pleased to see that Naruko was getting along so well with him. Especially since she's so darn cute. Hinata blushed as Naruko stepped up to the line, taking hold of the proffered weapons. Then, without seeming to move, she launched the weapons at her target. When everyone finished blinking, they realized she had hit every spot perfectly. Sasuke glared at her, as did Sakura. Hinata smiled at Naruko's continued success as Kiba stepped up for his turn, and noticed that Ino was now looking at Naruko with a confused expression. Naruko, catching her look, chuckled. What's up, Ino-chan? Did you think the reason I haven't been in normal classes meant I was behind or something? She chuckled again as Kiba joined her. Hinata missed what was said next as she focused on throwing her own weapons, but when she turned back, Ino was still watching, stunned, as Naruko and Kiba walked off laughing. Huh? I've never seen that particular look on Ino's face before. I wonder what they said to confuse her so. Hinata chuckled to herself as she passed the stunned Kunoichi on her way to follow Kiba and Naruko, who had begun following Iruka toward the practice ring for the 4th part of the exam. Konoha Ninja Academy Taijutsu Practice Field. Once everyone had gathered on the practice field, Iruka split everyone into 2 groups. When the students wouldn't quiet down and kept talking about how they had done on the previous 2 portions of the exam, he performed a few quick hand seals. Everyone quiet down and listen. Naruko and Kiba both rubbed at their ears as Iruka's jutsu was dispelled, returning his head and voice to normal. Now, as I was trying to say, the 4th part of the exam will involve a one-on-one taijutsu match between each of you and Mizuki. The matches will be 3 minutes long. You may use any taijutsu style or techniques that you know. Kiba Inuzuka, you're up first. Kiba grinned at his companions. Well, wish me luck. Mizuki may not be the coolest instructor, but I've seen him practice sparring with Iruka, and he knows his stuff. Kiba turned back to the ring as he and Akamaru entered. Crouching, he awaited Iruka's command to begin. When it came, he lunged forward to attack Mizuki using his family's trademark style. Naruko turned to Hinata as Kiba and Mizuki faced off. So, Kiba tells me you have some of the best taijutsu in the entire class. Hinata blushed and smiled faintly. Kiba really said that? Well, my family's personal style, Juken, disables the opponent's tenketsu. For years, I actually felt like a failure because I was apparently too nice. But about a year ago, something happened that changed my perspective. You see, the Hyuga clan is split into 2 groups, the main family and the branch family. My cousin Neji was born into the branch family, but he taught himself the powerful techniques normally reserved for the main family. My father, who never seemed to be proud of me, scolded me for allowing a branch member to surpass me before taking Neji under his wing for special training. He decided I was no longer his heir and began training my younger sister in my place. I'm not sure why, but that really pushed me to stop doubting myself. I took a look at my life and realized that my kindness is only a weakness if I let it interfere with my duties as a ninja. I also realized I'm not worthless, no matter what my father says. So I decided I would change and become the best I could be. A year later, well, I don't even care if my father is proud of me anymore. When I grow up, I plan to denounce my clan name. Naruko stared at Hinata, seeing the determination on her face. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice spoke up. This girl has fire. I'd keep an eye on her. Naruko silently agreed with the voice. Hinata was truly special. She smiled and held out her hand to Hinata. Well, Hinata, that's an admirable goal. I'll be cheering you on. Naruko winked at her, and was rewarded by Hinata blushing. Gra, get off me, Mizuki. Naruko and Hinata both turned back to the ring to see one of their classmates pinned by Mizuki. 12 seconds, Ichigo, not very impressive at all. I'm afraid you'll probably need another year at the academy. Ichigo grumbled as he stood up and walked off, muttering to himself. Okay, next up is Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke snorted and stepped into the ring, taking a basic fighting stance. When Iruka called for the start, he remained still, waiting for Mizuki to make the first move. Mizuki stepped forward and struck, starting a back and forth match between him and Sasuke. Naruko grinned, admitting to herself that the quiet boy had some skill. Sasuke lasted the entire 3 minutes, only taking 1 or 2 good hits from Mizuki. As he walked out of the ring, he smirked at Naruko with an arrogant grin as he was surrounded by a crowd of adoring fans. Hinata was surprised to note that Ino wasn't among them. When she looked around, she found her standing on the other side of the ring, talking to Kuji. Huh? Normally, I would expect her to be either fighting Sakura or fawning over Sasuke, so what's she doing talking to Kuji? Naruko. You're up next. Hinata blinked and turned to see her new friend step into the ring with Mizuki. Grinning, Naruko took a stance, her hands held open and in a defensive posture. Begin. Without waiting for Mizuki to strike first, Naruko quickly advanced, launching a quick combination punch at Mizuki's head. She ducked under his kick and rolled away. As Naruko repositioned and attacked again, she noticed Sakura arguing with Ino from the corner of her eye. Before she could react, Mizuki had teleported behind her and pinned her down. Unfortunately, Iruka wasn't watching, and Naruko realized Mizuki had noticed this too, shifting her pin to a position taught in the academy, before Iruka returned his attention to Naruko. Oh, Iruka commented as he looked at his timer. 15 seconds. Not very impressive. I expected more from you, Naruko. Naruko grumbled as she stood up and dusted herself off, walking over to Kiba and Hinata. Hinata, you're up next. Hinata gave Naruko a sympathetic smile as she passed her towards the ring. Ouch, Naruko. Mizuki totally cheated back there, but Iruka wasn't paying attention. Why didn't you say anything? Naruko looked up from dusting herself off and met Kiba's gaze. After a moment, she spoke quietly. Kiba, there's something about me that most people in the village dislike, and if anyone other than me mentions it, they could be exiled. When I came here for this exam, I knew that some people might try to hinder me. Kiba paused, surprised that anyone would want to stop his friend from succeeding. I've already dealt with dispelling a genjutsu on my exam paper, and someone tried to sabotage parts of the obstacle course using Suten Jutsu, Naruko continued. Kiba's eyes widened in shock. But the only people here are students. And Iruka and Mizuki. Naruko's expression grew more thoughtful as she led Kiba to a bench by the building. I know, and I'm not sure if Mizuki is acting alone or if both of them are involved. Either way, I'm handling it. I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention this to Hinata. She's doing well, but I think she still has some insecurities, and I don't want her to worry about my problems and risk messing up the last part of her exam. Kiba looked at Naruko with new respect. Man, Naruko, I didn't expect that. I won't tell Hinata. But she's a good person, and she deserves the truth from her friends. Kiba emphasized the word friends. Promise me you'll tell her after the exam, he added. Naruko considered his words for a moment and then nodded. All right, Kiba, you win. I'll tell her after we've officially passed the exams. I don't want her to risk failing for my sake. Kiba nodded, just as Iruka called time and Hinata left the ring, flushed but excited. Mizuki seemed to be holding his arm in an unusual position. Did you see that? Hinata ran over to them with a big smile. Naruko grinned back at the excited Kunoichi. Yeah, we saw, Hinata. You did great. I'm really impressed. Kiba added with a smile, heck yeah, Hinata. You did amazing. And, is it just me, or did you somehow shut down Mizuki's arm? Hinata chuckled. I guess he thought he needed to take it easy on me since I'm a woman. Well, I showed him not to underestimate us. Hinata struck a playful pose, and Naruko and Kiba both burst out laughing, with Akamaru barking in excitement. Hinata blinked, confused for a second, before she joined in the laughter. As they laughed, they almost missed Iruka calling everyone to return to the classroom for the final phase of the exam. Konoha Ninja Academy Classroom A. Everyone filed back into the classroom, chattering excitedly. Naruko kept half her attention on Kiba, who was explaining a new technique his sister had taught him that would let him and Akamaru share abilities, and the other half on the rest of her classmates, observing their behavior. She saw Ichigo sit down dejectedly at the front, next to a small black-haired girl and a grumpy-looking redhead. Shikamaru took his usual seat beside Kuji, and Naruko smiled when she saw her friend enjoying a bag of barbecue-flavored chips she had introduced him to months ago. Several girls were fighting over seats near Sasuke, who looked at Naruko and gave a small smirk. Naruko narrowed her eyes, not letting the moment go unnoticed. Okay, everyone, settle down. Naruko, Kiba, and Hinata sat down at the back of the room. Now, for the final part of the exam. Each of you will enter the next room one at a time to perform a bunshine and a henge. You will be scored on both. Ichigo, you're up first. Naruko watched as the orange-haired Ichigo stood and followed Iruka and Mizuki into the next room. Hey, Naruko, Kiba nudged her. Yeah? Your teachers did teach you the proper way to perform a bunshine and henge, right? I mean, did they even have time, considering all the special training they've been giving you? Naruko reached out to grab Kiba, trying to give him a playful noogie. Hinata almost stepped in to stop them but then shook her head, giving up on trying to separate them. As she turned her attention to the rest of the room, she noticed Ino staring at Naruko, a thoughtful expression on her face. Hinata, I need to speak with you for a moment, privately. Hinata turned to find Shino standing next to her desk, his usual calm demeanor present. Oh, sure, Shino, no problem. Hinata glanced back at Naruko and Kiba, who were still wrestling on the ground while Akamaru barked at them excitedly. She followed Shino a little farther away. Once they were out of earshot, Shino spoke quietly. Naruko has earned my respect, Hinata. Over the course of this exam, I've noticed attempts to disrupt her performance. I'm sure Naruko is aware of them, but for some reason, she's chosen not to speak up. I suspect I know why. I would like to ask that you use your Byakugan when Naruko goes to perform the final part of her exam and watch for anything suspicious. Hinata blinked, surprised by how much Shino had shared. After a moment, she processed his words. Wait, you think one of our instructors is trying to make Naruko fail the exam? Shino nodded. But why would anyone want to do that? Shino looked uneasy, which was rare for him. I can't say, Hinata. Hinata crossed her arms thoughtfully. Fine. I trust you, Shino, as you've always been honest with me. But just make sure you're sitting near me when Naruko goes into the next room. Shino nodded in agreement. Shino, you're up. Both students turned to see Iruka poking his head into the room. Shikamaru walked through the door, muttering his usual troublesome. Hinata shared a look with Shino before he turned and headed down the stairs toward the front of the class. Once Shino and Iruka left, Hinata returned to her seat. Kiba and Naruko had finally collapsed on the floor, still laughing, with Akamaru playfully jumping between them. Things continued normally until Ino returned from her exam. When Iruka poked his head into the room, he called Naruko's name. As Naruko stood up and headed down the stairs, Hinata noticed something seemed off with Ino. Before she could process it, Ino slapped Sakura and started yelling at her. Forehead. Why'd you do that, Ino pig? The argument quickly escalated into a full-on fight. Iruka sighed and called over to Naruko. Naruko, head down the hall to classroom B. Mizuki will oversee your exam. I need to break these two up. Hinata and Shino exchanged a meaningful look, and Kiba, noticing their serious expressions, raised an eyebrow. Hinata? What's going on? Hinata ignored him as Shino moved closer. Her attention was focused on the classroom door. Byakugan. Dash. Konoha Ninja Academy Classroom B. Mizuki shuffled through some papers as Naruko entered the room. Hello, Naruko. Hello, instructor. Mizuki glanced at the door. Where's Iruka? He was supposed to bring you. Naruko chuckled nervously, scratching the back of her head. Ino and Sakura started fighting. He said you'd administer my exam. Naruko didn't notice the sly smile Mizuki gave her as he shuffled more papers. All right then. Let's start with a bunshine. Naruko straightened up, focusing. She quickly formed hand seals. Kage bunshine no jutsu. The room filled with copies of Naruko, all of them grinning. Mizuki blinked in surprise. Impressive. But. He raised an eyebrow. I asked for a bunshine. While Kage bunshine is more advanced, it wasn't the requested technique. He made a few marks on Naruko's sheet, continuing to appear unimpressed. Naruko, realizing Mizuki was intentionally trying to sabotage her exam, didn't want to confront him directly. Instead, she devised a plan. Naruko looked down at the blushing Kunoichi. Where exactly did you learn that technique you performed? That was more than just a simple illusion. Naruko finally understood why she was blushing. Well, you see. Where you learn that technique is not relevant at the present moment, Naruko. Naruko turned her gaze to Shino as he interrupted. What matters is that at least one instructor, possibly both, has attempted to lower your exam scores on multiple occasions, and you have done nothing about it. If you would accept it, Kiba, Hinata, and I will contact the Hokage and attest to this fact. Naruko remained quiet for a moment, appraising Shino. Finally, she spoke. No, Shino, don't. As long as I pass the exam, which I am sure I will, there will be no need for that. You and I both knew that this was a possibility from the moment I decided to come today to take the exams. And you well know that I will likely have to deal with worse now that I will be in Konoha on a regular basis. I can't always go running to the Hokage when I have a problem. I'm assuming Hinata informed you of precisely what techniques I performed in there? Shino nodded, and Kiba grinned widely, confirming Naruko's suspicions. Well, that was just the tip of the iceberg. I am under orders to keep the majority of my skills secret for now. Only my teammates will learn any more than I have shown here, at least for the time being. And even then, there are skills that I, by necessity, must keep secret even from them, whoever they may be. I will not reveal them unless I am absolutely certain I can trust my teammates not to react poorly. No, Naruko. What do you mean by react poorly? All three boys turned to face Hinata. It's nothing, Hinata. It's not that I don't consider you as a friend already, but rather that, given the way the majority of people who know this secret think about me, I do not share it lightly. Shino knows, as does Kuji Akamiki, but they have both proven to be trustworthy and non-judgmental people. Perhaps one day I'll be able to trust you with this knowledge as well. Naruko grinned and looked at Kiba, who had Akamaru on top of his head again. And yes, Kiba, I'm sure I'll be able to trust you with it eventually too. Kiba laughed and slapped Naruko on the back. No pressure, Naruko. Just tell me one thing. Does my sister know? Naruko paused for a second. Yes. And not because I told her. She is old enough that she already knew. Both Hinata and Kiba puzzled at what sort of secret about Naruko could be known by people of a certain age but not those younger. Naruko suddenly smiled and perked up. Anyways, cheer up. We are almost done with our exams, and by this time next week we will all be Jinan of Konohagakure. Little as that means. Oh, shut up, Baka Kitsune. It's a means to an end, and you know it. Naruko could swear she heard the fox grinning in the back of her mind. 1 hour later. Both Iruka and Mizuki finally returned, flanking the Hokage. As she made her way back to her seat by Kiba and Naruko, Iruka and Mizuki shuffled a few papers into a folder and then turned to face the class. You have all performed admirably and are a real honor to our village. While some of you may need another year or two before we can put you in harm's way, your failure of the exam should in no way dishearten you. The rest of you will be returning here in the morning for your team assignments. The Hokage took a puff on her pipe before continuing. Iruka, if you would please read the list of those who passed? Iruka chuckled and stepped forward with a scroll in his hands and began reading off the list of names. Abarai Renji, passed. Shino Abarame, passed. Akamiki Kuji, passed. Hinata saw that Naruko and Kiba had their fingers crossed in anticipation. She was so distracted she almost missed when Iruka called her name. Before it fully sank in, she was being hugged by Naruko and Kiba, who were congratulating her on passing. Inuzuka Kiba. Yada. Ahem. Would you please keep it down to a muted roar, Kiba? I am trying to read off the list of students who passed. Kiba sheepishly sank back into his seat as Iruka continued. Kuchiki Rukia, passed. Kurosaki Ichigo, passed. Naruko smiled as the orange-haired guy who'd gone down even faster than her during the taijutsu exam stood triumphantly on his desk. Before an eraser tossed by Iruka knocked him backward to the floor, his two companions stared down at his twitching form. See guys, if he could pass, then I don't have a problem. Hinata smiled, and Kiba chuckled. Akamaru barked happily. When Uchiha Sasuke was announced, Naruko noticed that Sasuke was grinning triumphantly in her direction. When Uzumaki Naruko was announced, Naruko noticed that Sasuke's grin turned into a frown. Naruko just grinned back at him for a moment before turning to shake Hinata's proffered hand. And finally, Yamanaka Ino, passed. Iruka rolled up the scroll and stepped back. The Hokage took a few puffs on her pipe before speaking. Congratulations to all of you who passed. Tonight you get to celebrate with your family. I'm sure they are all outside anxiously awaiting to hear if you passed. Tomorrow, I want all of you who passed to return here at 8 a.m. sharp for your team assignments. Until then, enjoy your celebrating, for you are now Genin of Konohagakure. A few of the newly promoted Genin cheered loudly as the Hokage left the room, followed by a few dejected students who would need to spend another year at the academy. Iruka and Mizuki began to pass out Hitai 8. Munch hey, Naruko. Don't forget. Hikaru's at 6. Munch. Naruko saw Kuji proudly wearing his new Hitai 8. Hee, definitely, Kuji. Naruko waved at him before taking the proffered headband from Iruka as she stepped up to the final row. Naruko grinned. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. Even though you didn't do anything to stop Mizuki from attempting to sabotage my exam. Makes me wonder if you were honestly oblivious or in cahoots. Hinata and Kiba both gasped at Naruko's blunt statement. Iruka looked taken aback for a moment before frowning. And what makes you think Mizuki was attempting to sabotage your exam, Naruko? Kiba and Hinata jumped in before Naruko could speak, both yelling about the different things Mizuki had done. It took Iruka a minute to quiet them both, during which time Naruko merely kept a watchful eye on Mizuki and a steady stare at Iruka. Now, Naruko, as I asked, what makes you think Mizuki was attempting to sabotage your exam? It's simple, sensei. First, he was the one who handed me my exam during the first part of the exam, which I detected was under a genjutsu, which I dispelled. Hinata and Kiba both looked shocked that Naruko had been able to dispel a genjutsu unnoticed. Second, during the obstacle course, someone used some form of Suten Jutsu to make sections of the obstacle course extremely slippery for me. Third, during the Taijutsu exam, when you looked away to deal with Ino and Sakura, Mizuki shunshined to get behind me and put me in a body hold. While I could probably have broken free, I did not expect him to cheat, nor did I wish to injure a fellow Konoha shinobi during a friendly match. Iruka looked appalled at the thought that what Naruko said could be true. And finally, Ino was ignoring Sakura ever since the accuracy portion of the exam. Yet when she came back from her ninjutsu practical, she appeared to be in a daze and attacked Sakura for no apparent reason, forcing you to try to break them up. Coincidentally, this occurred just as I was called for my exam. When I performed Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, a considerably more advanced technique than a simple Bunshin, Mizuki marked me down as failing to perform Bunshin no Jutsu. And I'm sure my henge score has me marked as doing poorly, but I was so fed up with Mizuki's attempts that I used a much stronger technique to knock him out so I could return to my friends. Iruka balked when Naruko casually tossed about knowing Kage Bunshin, a technique he knew to be forbidden. So you're the reason I found Mizuki passed out? Yup. Guess the perverted guy couldn't handle my technique. Kiba chuckled, and Hinata blushed. Naruko, these are serious accusations. If you're not telling the truth, you could be in serious trouble. I'm telling the complete truth, Naruko said seriously. Whether you decide to act on what I've told you is up to you. Now, good day, sensei. I need to hurry if I'm going to meet up with my mom. Naruko nodded respectfully before dodging around Iruka and hopping out the window. After pausing for a moment, both Hinata and Kiba bowed as well, grabbing their Hitai 8 as they ran past and leapt out the window to follow Naruko, Kiba barking excitedly. Iruka chuckled at their exuberance as he turned to head down the stairs, but the sight of Mizuki leaving the classroom drove what Naruko had just told him back into his mind. Mizuki. If I find any evidence that indicates what Naruko said is true, I won't hesitate to act. Outside Konoha Ninja Academy. Naruko landed with a thud outside the academy building, followed shortly by her new friends Kiba and Hinata. Hinata looked at her with a mixture of shock and admiration on her face. Kiba grinned as he slapped Naruko on the back. Wow, I can't believe you just did that. I mean, the look on Iruka's face was totally worth not calling Mizuki on his trickery. Kiba. Hinata was shocked that her friend would be pleased at Iruka's surprise and confusion. On second thought, maybe it's not so surprising after all. What? You know it's true. Iruka always seems to be a little too serious. Kiba let out a yowl as Hinata smacked him in the back of the head. That's because you always pull pranks, Kiba. Naruko chuckled as Hinata smacked Kiba again, and Kiba attempted to fend her off. She was about to speak when a shout rang out from behind her, from the direction of the entrance to the academy. Naruko. There you are. Your mom and I have been looking everywhere for you. Naruko facepalmed as Rin came up behind her, attacking with a big hug and a huge grin on her face. So I'm guessing from this Konoha headband you're holding that you passed, right? Naruko grinned and turned to give Rin a hug back before taking a step back towards her friends. Yup, with mostly flying colors. I'll explain the mostly at dinner. Rin just grinned at Naruko for a moment before looking past her and noticing her now stunned companions. Hinata was blushing because Rin was a gorgeous woman, and had been hugging her new crush quite closely. Kiba, with a bright red face, noticed that Rin's white and red bodysuit was quite form-fitting. When Naruko didn't say anything after a moment, Rin grinned and spoke up again. So Naruko, aren't you going to introduce me to your new friends? Rin's grin widened as Naruko blushed, realizing her forgetfulness. Auntie Rin, these are Inuzuka Kiba and Hyuga Hinata. They've made me feel really welcome, so please, don't embarrass me in front of them. Akamaru woofed from atop Kiba's head, and Hinata continued to blush. Rin spoke again as she turned to lead the way back to the front of the academy. Oh, don't worry Naruko. I'd never do that to you. That's Anko's job. Naruko stopped dead in her tracks as Kiba and Hinata both followed Rin. Ananko's here? With Mom? To see me graduate? Rin looked back over her shoulder as she continued to walk, Hinata looking back and forth between her and Naruko. Oh yes Naruko. And she is very excited to see you wearing your new Konoha headband. Rin shook her head as she faced forward again. I swear, if she wasn't already slated for a special project of the Hokages, she'd be requesting to be your Jounin instructor. Naruko turned even whiter. As much as she respected the dark-haired kunoichi's skill as a ninja, the thought of spending all day, every day, with her frankly scared her. Something just wasn't right with that woman. Naruko was brought back to reality by Kiba's cry of hey, hurry up Naruko. Shaking her head to clear it, she realized her friends were rounding the corner, and she took off at a sprint to catch up. By the time she caught up with them, they had already reached the milling group of grinning new Jinan and their proud parents and siblings. She chuckled as she saw Kiba tackled by a wild-looking woman with red markings on her face while a more refined-looking Inuzuka woman in an entirely white coat watched on smiling. Naruko easily recognized Hana Inuzuka, Kiba's sister. She caught sight of Naruko and waved before being ambushed by a hug from her younger brother and a big lick from Akamaru. Before Naruko could notice anything else, she was ambushed by an attack from a beautiful redhead in blue and red pants and a blouse. Ack! Mom! You're crushing me! Naruko gasped for breath as her mom released the hug, smiling down at her. Her relief was short-lived as she heard a voice behind her say hello Gaki before she was ambushed from behind by another hug. Anko, the snake Jounin, had struck. Gruh! Get off me, Anko! It's creepy when you hug me while wearing that. Hinata blushed seeing Anko's outfit. Anko was dressed in a short skirt and a long trench coat, wearing practically nothing but a sheer fishnet bodysuit underneath it. She silently prayed that her nose wouldn't start bleeding again. Anko finally released Naruko, chuckling along with her mom and aunt as she spun away from her, wiping at herself as if dusting herself off. So Naruko, let's see it. Naruko looked up at her mom, only to be greeted by the sight of 3 grinning kunoichi and 1 extremely blushing one, who was trying not to look at Anko's torso region. Finally realizing what they meant, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her Hitai 8, pulling it to her forehead and tying it behind her head, grinning proudly as she did so. As she did this, Hinata noticed a number of the adults around them looking at Naruko out of the corner of their eye with disgusted looks, and caught several whispers, including comments like is that th and quiet. You know we can't talk about that. Hinata filed it away for future analysis and investigation as she turned her attention back to Naruko. Naruko continued smiling as Rin and Anko tossed off comments about how cool she looked now that she was a Konoha shinobi, and her mom smiled proudly at her, trying not to cry as Naruko reminded her so much of her father at this moment. Hinata watched all the happiness and pride they had in Naruko and felt a little jealous, as she had no one to shower such praise upon her. After a few moments, everyone quieted, waiting for Naruko to speak. Remembering her earlier forgetfulness, she hurried to prevent another occurrence. Mom, Anko, this is Hyuga Hinata, one of my new friends. Anko sized the young kunoichi up like a snake sizing up prey, which unnerved Hinata slightly, but her nerves were allayed when Naruko's mother stepped forward and held out her hand. Hinata took it, shaking it. It's a pleasure to meet you, Hinata. I'm Kushina, Naruko's mother. Because of her isolation, she's had few friends growing up, so I'm pleased to see she made a new friend this quickly. Particularly such an attractive young kunoichi. Hinata blushed as she and Kushina ceased shaking hands. Anyways, Hinata, I noticed that no one is here to greet you. Are your parents away on missions? Hinata looked down for a moment before looking back up with confidence. No ma'am. My family considers me a failure because I am too nice, too weak for them. As such, I did not expect any of them to be here. Kushina looked puzzled that anyone could dislike this cheerful kunoichi. Well, that won't do. That won't do at all. Well, here's a thought. Since we have a few hours to kill, we were planning to take Naruko to buy some gear before we meet the Akimichis for dinner. Why don't you join us? It'll be my treat. And this way I can get to know you better. Kushina was not unobservant, and she had seen the way Hinata had been looking at her daughter. Before Hinata could reply, Naruko spoke up. Shopping sounds good, Mom, but I promised Oji-san I'd stop by and see him after graduation. Anko snorted, and Rin chuckled. Kushina shook her head as Hinata looked confused. I really wish you'd stop calling him that, Naruko. It's disrespectful. Hinata was now even more confused. Naruko just smirked and then turned to look over her shoulder. Hey Kiba, we're meeting Kuji and his dad for dinner at Hikaru's tonight at 6 for a celebratory dinner. You and your family are welcome to join us. Kiba looked up from the wrestling match that was him and his mother. Well, my mom's got a patrol tonight, but I'll certainly be there. Kiba looked questioningly at his sister for a moment, who merely nodded back, smiling. Kiba grinned and looked back at Naruko. Guess it'll be me and Hana then. Hikaru's, you said? Isn't that the restaurant Kuji's always talking about? Naruko laughed, and Hinata nodded in agreement with Kiba. Yes, Kiba, it is. I think it's near the Hokage's tower, on the north side. Kiba's grin grew wider as his mother growled, and the wrestling began again. Well, I'll see you at 6 then. Ha, now you're the one who's pinned, Mom. Naruko and Hinata both chuckled as they turned back to face the three adult kunoichi. So, shall we get started? Naruko asked innocently enough, but the grin on her face belied the fact that she was looking forward to buying some custom gear. Konoha Shopping District. As the group moved from shop to shop, picking out items, Hinata noticed a few things. First, although the three women in Naruko's life often teased her, it was clear they genuinely cared about her well-being. The second thing Hinata observed was that wherever they went, villagers would smile at Naruko for a moment before recognition set in, and then they would glare in her direction. However, no one younger or around her age seemed to react in the same way. Third, though she was sure Naruko must be aware of it, she appeared to simply ignore it and continued enjoying the shopping. This couldn't be said for her guardians, though. At one shop, a weapons store, while Naruko browsed through various exotic and traditional shinobi weapons, Hinata noticed Anko speaking quietly but firmly to the shopkeeper. Though Hinata couldn't catch every word, she clearly heard Anko say, "If I find you selling low-quality items to these young shinobi or overcharging them, I will make sure you regret it." Hinata shuddered. Whatever this was about, she was certain it had something to do with the secret Naruko had mentioned, but she couldn't quite figure it out. Their next stop was another weapons shop, run by a retired shinobi. Hinata was happy to note that when the shopkeeper recognized Naruko, he didn't recoil, but instead grinned. A few moments later, she understood why. Naruko. Ah, I see you've become a genin, judging by the headband you're wearing. Looks like my best customer is doing well. Hinata blinked as Naruko turned to her. Hinata, this is Kanae. He was a close friend of my parents before I was born, and he's been making kunai for our traps back home for years. Kanae, this is Hinata, one of my new friends. Kanae smiled and turned his attention to the three women. So, I take it you're here to pick up the special order you placed last month? Naruko looked curiously at Kanae and her mother. Order? What's Kanae talking about, Mom? The traps are fully stocked for the next 3 months. Kushina smiled warmly at her daughter. It's something special, a gift for you, dear. Kushina took an intricately carved wooden box from Kanae and opened it to reveal a set of kunai with unique prongs, each inscribed with intricate designs. I had these made in honor of your father. They are similar to the ones he used in battle. Kushina's eyes glistened with emotion as she spoke of her late husband. I had Kanae engrave your name on one side, and the names of both the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans on the other. I hope you'll carry them with you into every battle, and never forget where you came from. Your father would be so proud to see you now. He'd be so happy. Kushina teared up as she dropped to her knees. Anko quickly stepped forward, catching the wooden box before it could fall and closing it to keep it safe, while Rin rushed to Kushina's side to comfort her. Naruko, standing proudly in her new shinobi uniform, knelt down to her mother, wrapping her arms around her. I understand, Mom, Naruko said softly. Kushina wiped her eyes and regained her composure. I'm sorry. Naruko, you remind me so much of your father. It just brings back so many memories. Naruko and Rin gently helped Kushina back to her feet, and after a brief moment, Kushina smiled again, gathering herself before paying Kanae for the kunai and some additional equipment. As she paid, Naruko excitedly showed Hinata around Kanae's shop, both of them laughing and admiring various rare and exotic weapons. This katana was made by Kanae in honor of my father, Naruko explained enthusiastically. It was after my father sacrificed himself to defeat the Kyubi no Kitsune. Kanae said, when I become a jounin, this will be a special gift for me. Hinata smiled as she observed Naruko's excitement, seeing how much she admired her father and looked up to him as a hero. She quietly wished she had someone like that to look up to. Looking over at Anko and Rin, both of whom proudly wore headbands, Hinata wondered if she could look to these strong women as role models in her own life. Hokage's office, approximately 5:30. Sarutobi sat quietly at his desk, smoking his pipe as he read over the latest request from the village council. It seemed they were suggesting that the only remaining Sharingan user in Konoha be assigned as Uchiha Sasuke's jounin instructor. Sarutobi sighed and set the paper aside. While Hatake Kakashi was undeniably a genius, he had a tendency to be late and often read novels that were a bit unconventional. However, Sarutobi had to admit, Kakashi's choice of literature was, in a strange way, quite fitting. Sarutobi chuckled to himself, having several of Kakashi's favorite orange-covered novels in his private collection. With a sigh, he stamped the paper approved and moved it to the out pile. Just as he was reaching for the next document, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Yes, Arisa? Sir, you asked to be notified when the Uzumakas arrived, Arisa said, poking her head in. Sarutobi smiled. Please send them in, Arisa. And since I have no other meetings scheduled for the evening, you may take the rest of the day off. Arisa smiled and nodded before stepping back through the door, which was opened a few moments later by the imposing figure of Mitarashi Anko, flanked by Uzumaki Kushina and Rin. Following them were Naruko, looking quite sharp in her new clothes, and... Is that Hinata Hyuga? Sarutobi thought as he recognized her from the graduation records. As Naruko and the others approached, he noticed the gleam in Naruko's eyes, followed by a mischievous smirk. Oh no, Sarutobi thought with a sigh. Naruko winked and, with a few quick hand signs, disappeared in a puff of smoke, only to be replaced by a comically exaggerated version of herself. Sarutobi was momentarily stunned by the unexpected prank, but before he could react, the women in the room quickly scolded Naruko for her antics. Ouch! What was that for? Naruko exclaimed, rubbing the back of her head. Kushina, arms crossed and stern, looked at her daughter. That was for using that technique again. I told you not to use it outside of missions. But Mom, it's so easy to prank the Hokage like this. Naruko protested, her voice full of excitement. Kushina's expression softened, but Anko couldn't help but snicker behind her hand, and even Rin shook her head with a smile. Naruko, what are we going to do with you? Rin said affectionately. Naruko laughed sheepishly, rubbing the back of her head as she realized the prank had gone a little too far. As everyone turned to face Sarutobi's desk again, the Hokage slowly got to his feet with a groan, brushing himself off. Dear YouTube family. And that's a wrap for this part of our journey together. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed creating it for you. But don't go anywhere, because there's much more coming your way, and I can't wait to share the next chapters with you all. I'd absolutely love to hear what you think, so feel free to drop your thoughts, suggestions, or feedback in the comments below. Your input means the world to me and helps make this community stronger. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps this dream alive, and together we'll keep growing and making more amazing content for everyone to enjoy. Sending you all love and good vibes. Lots of love. 6 Path Weeb.